Welcome to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I am Raven, and I have seen CSI thrown through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick, and these are my first time experiencing these episodes.
And today we are reviewing Season 3, Episode 12, Got Murder. Original air date, January 16th, 2003. Director is Kenneth Fink. Writers are Anthony E. Zeiker and Sarah Goldfinger, which I feel like Sarah Goldfinger is a new writer.
Yeah, name sounds familiar, but also sounds like the James Bond character.
That's very fair. And we begin today's episode with, well, we later find out is a raven, but a bird flying over Vegas and then into the desert and then to the woods. But before we can continue down that thread, I'm actually immensely curious what today's Vegas score is.
Our Vegas score is 47.
Okay, I thought it was going to be high, which was surprising because this first shot of Vegas is very quick. It's like a 2 or 3 second shot, and then it's like desert and woods. But there's so many intimate, like long cut scenes using the Vegas Strip.
Scene for 6 seconds at the beginning. That's the first scene. But then right after the credits, there's like a double cut scene, like a double shot, and then and then there's 5 more through the episode. So I actually missed one and picked it up in the rewatch, and then I spent way too long trying to make sure that it wasn't that no, it was the one that I missed this one, and I wasn't, because
double counting
they're all like the same length. I'm not like writing down the transition notes every single time. Sometimes I'll write like on like every third one just in case I lose track, because usually on the rewatch it gets really hard to keep track because I'm not writing them down as I go. But no, it was it's also all very front loaded. They continue this pattern. Maybe that's just a stylistic choice. A lot cut scenes early on, I think, when they're first establishing new locations, and they're much rarer later on, which is why sometimes I miss one towards the end. Is they like kind of dry up and I forget.
And so you're like, whatever.
And you have like a 3-second scene, and you're like, oh yeah, wait, gotta write that down.
Wait a second. So we go from flying over Vegas to flying over the desert to flying into the woods. We then see a group of men walking through the woods. We kind of get a camera angle to the front of them. And this is my spot, the guest star.
Great, because I had a fake spot the guest star in this scene, and I'm curious if it's that person.
So the guy in the middle who kind of ends up talking, I think, kind of the most, or being the one who spots the raven, is in the episode, he is credited as ornithologist number 1. His actual name is Joel McKinnon Miller, and I know him as Scully from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh.
He's also been in a million other things.
So
he's been in Big Love. He was in The Truman Show. He was recently in The Staircase. I haven't seen The Staircase yet. He is quite a varied IMDb, but he was in 153 episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so that's all. And I've seen all of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so that's how I know him.
I thought the person on the right of the scene was a potential, like, I had like, wait, do I know who that person is? And then I looked him up. I do not. Okay. I'm confusing him with somebody else who looks very similar.
Which we've had a few times before. Yeah.
And because the person I'm thinking of, I never really figured out exactly who it was, but would be a much bigger name, where this person has like almost nothing there in IMDb.
Yeah, you're like, I don't think it's this person.
We also, actually, I can't remember when we get it, but another classic, spot the guest star in the, we'll get to the guest star itself much later, but spot the guest star in the credits.
Oh, okay.
There's a big, probably our biggest guest star of the episode.
Okay.
Was in the credits, and I was like, oh, and no one know what I said. I made a prediction. This is the murderer. Because I have this history as a track record of,
that is true.
I think it's just because they're good actors at young ages getting critical roles. Yep. And sometimes that's someone very close to the murderer or the murderer themselves. Right?
Yeah. Except for Zachary Quintos.
Yeah. But was it Jeremy Renner? Was a classic
Jeremy
example.
Renner was close. Yep. Yeah. So that's fair. So we'll get there. We learn pretty quickly that the men walking through the woods are bird watchers, and they spot the raven from our initial scene.
I do have Raven written large letters in my notebook.
Raven.
But that was from actually I could tell it was from Raven from the opening scene.
Yeah.
The only sort of not the only, but classically all black.
Classically all black.
Bird.
So this Raven, though, in particular, has an eyeball in its beak. So that's not a great sign. And then we have what I think is a really fun camera shot where we start really zoomed in on Grissom's eye and then like zoom out to realize that he's on scene.
I had a moment where I was like, how did they get the eye before I realized that the Raven put it in its nest and they were just
yes.
I was like, have you ever tried to catch a bird? It's so hard.
It dropped it in its nest. So Catherine and Grissom there are on scene and they're up a ladder looking in the nest, and this is where we learned that ravens can travel up to 30 miles, so there's a pretty wide circumference that they're going to have to search. And of course,
sounds like a lot and not a little for a flyer. You know what I mean? Like I have no concept.
I have no concept either.
But like if you and I could fly, like I don't think it would take it like, you know, at a regular speed, like 30 miles just doesn't seem like it would be that far away.
Yeah. Because like 30 miles on the highway, right? If you're just a straight shot.
No, I mean, if you're going 60 miles an hour, it's 30 minutes, right?
30 minutes. Like, that's not bad. And of course, before we get to credits, Grissom just has to quote some Edgar Allan Poe because
I almost looked it up because I wasn't sure. I was like, I should give him the Shadow of the Doubt, but it sounded like he
changed it a little bit,
butchered it a little.
Yeah, to make it fit the crime that they were investigating.
Even just the normal stanza. It was only a couple words, but again, the problem is this is like one of those things that you memorize in high school to say aloud in front of your class. Yeah. And so my memory of the words is I'm going to assume that the internet existed at this time and somebody looked it up or got a book and wrote it down, and that my 20-year-old memory is faulty.
I mean, it happens to the best of
the
us.
Very end of it, yes, he changed.
And we both have had COVID in the not so distant long ago, and COVID brain fog is for real.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
So we go to credits. We are with Grissom in the lab. He's with the eyeball, and I had to make note of this. It's not a negative on the episode. It's just this is weird, but there's like 70s spy music playing over as he's investigating the eyeball.
There's several weird musical choices in this episode.
So strange. I just was like, I literally in my notes, I was like, 70s spy?
I clocked one from later on the first watch through, and it made me hypersensitive to it on the second watch through.
Okay. Well, if you remember it when we get there, let's call it out.
I didn't write it down.
Okay.
But on the second watch through, it was like 3 times I was like, man, the soundtrack of this episode is pretty good.
Yeah. And so Grissom collects a contact lens off of the eye. He also, again, this show very rarely makes me squirm. I've seen this so many times, but him putting the needle in the eyeball to extract the sample, I was like, do not like it. Don't like it.
It almost shocks me that doesn't squig me out because...
Oh, it squigged me out. I was like, ooh.
Things in your skin squig me out.
Yeah.
And I have had to have something cut out of my eye before.
Oh my gosh.
And you would think that would
that would like viscerally upset you.
I was terrified in the moment. Like, look ahead, don't move your eye, don't move your eye. But yeah, no, I'm surprisingly fine with eyeballs for some reason.
Yeah, so nope, that definitely got me a little bit. But we exit that scene for a moment. Catherine is sifting through the nest. Grissom walks in. We realize that one of the only information that he's been able to gather so far about the eyeball is that it's still blue. So they think that the person died less than 48 hours ago. And
there's a lot of little notes in this episode about like dating a body, and like they know all of these facts, and it makes a ton of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I guess it comes up and it's super important all the time when you find a random body. But all I could think was like, how, like a normal CSI person or a normal coroner, how many times are you finding bodies where you have no idea where the person died? Because in this show, it's like every week.
Happens a lot. It's a pretty serious problem here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But Catherine has found seagull feathers in the nest, so Grissom's thinking maybe the body is like in or near Lake Mead. Catherine doesn't think so. She just thinks that ravens know where to shop, and they shop at the landfill.
Yes, that's like super clever and probably highly accurate.
Yes. So Catherine, Sarah, and Nick are at the landfill, and they're at the active cell at the landfill. So like the section of the landfill that is being where trash is actively currently being dumped and has been for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think they said.
This might be the most dangerous thing anyone on CSI has ever done.
Oh, it's just like
they show the landfill? Like trash being dumped 5
all
feet
around them. Yeah.
They're walking through like a minefield. Who knows what's thrown away here?
Yep.
The amount of real life precautions that I imagine you would have to take to do this is much greater than the show on the TV.
Yes.
And all I could think is like they couldn't have filmed it this way either. So they must have used some clever like forced perspective or something.
Yeah, they must have. Yeah, there's no way they would have let the actors get that close to the trash.
And it's not CGI or like maybe even double exposure film, like real old school stuff. It was sort of like first I was like, this is so dangerous. There's no VR. I said, wait a second. That means they can't be doing this. Yeah. It would be so dangerous.
It would be very dangerous indeed. We leave the landfill and we're with Grissom with Doc Robbins. We learn that the victim was not dehydrated and they weren't diabetic, but that's about all we know from the eyeball thus far. But then David chimes in. He has a male victim on the table, 35, dropped dead at his work. We learned that this victim's name is Fred Stearns. And so Grissom gives him the okay to like go ahead and start the autopsy on this victim.
This scene was so weird and I didn't get it the first time.
Okay.
And then I realized on the rewatch, it's Grissom says hi, or David says hi to Grissom. Yep. Grissom can't hear him. He turns to look at him to try to catch up on the conversation. And it creates this awkward moment where David just starts describing what he's about to do.
Yeah.
And then Grissom's like, oh, okay, yeah, carry on. It's very similar to that when he like told Nick on the rooftop.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't get that the first time, that's what they were trying to do. And I was like, I picked up on the second time and I was like, oh, I was like, was this supposed to be like David's first autopsy or you're like cheering him on? I was like, wait, no, he does this all the time. It felt so awkward. And I was like, oh, it's supposed to feel awkward because you're supposed to realize that Grissom couldn't tell what Dave was saying, just turned and waited for him to say something else so he could read his lips.
Yeah. And so Grissom gives the okay, he leaves. We realize that this victim has like black substance like on his teeth and like in parts of his like mouth and like the inner part of his lip. And, so David starts the autopsy. He starts cutting and the victim is bleeding, which this is not how you're supposed to bleed if you're dead. Yeah. And so
nice vibrant red blood.
Yeah. So Doc Robbins jumps into action. He goes in and shoves the needle right into his heart and injects and brings the victim back to life.
But he's like, can you thread a needle for me?
Yes, and then we need to stitch up what we just cut into him as well. We go back to the landfill. We kind of have a montage of Catherine, Nick, and Sarah like searching it. After some time, Catherine finds a bloody shirt and then a leg, which Nick has to point out it's obviously a female leg.
Like, I assume because she's wearing high heels.
I assume, but we're a little more progressive now than we were in 2003. Yeah. But you can wear high heels and not be a female.
Also, when you're dead, people can put whatever they want in your feet.
This is also true. People dress bodies all the time.
If anything, it's a little weird that you dispose of a body and left its shoes on. Yeah. Also, I got really visceral remindings of a Christmas Story lamp by this lamp with a high heel. And he's like shoving the bag, and I was like, why is that? I guess it's just a leg.
It's just a leg.
Because it was not attached to a
lamp.
Body. I was like, no, because it wasn't attached to a human. I was like, it made me think of the lamp.
That's fair. I mean, I think that's fair. I think that's that makes sense to me. But they do end up uncovering more of the body. But they have a conversation that it's very strange that with how long they're estimating the body has been here and the like temperature, like the air temperature, but then the temperature from the trash like decomposing underneath it. How is his body like not bloated from the heat? This doesn't make any sense that the body is not bloated at all.
I didn't even catch this until my second watch through. Like they definitely they don't. See, this is a great job of like putting these things in the episode without like pointing them out and dragging them the point.
Yeah, they drop it and then they move on.
Yeah,
they drop and go, which is nice. Yeah, this is not a heavy-handed episode by any stretch of the imagination. This is a like, hey, we're gonna give it to you, and then we're gonna go move right on along. And in that vein, we move along with Catherine. She's now with Doc Robbins. Of course, she has to bring up that Doc Robbins was a superhero today, saved a man's life. But they're gonna go focus on Catherine's victim at the moment. Cause of death currently undetermined. Could be blunt force trauma, but one way to possibly identify her is that she has a spinal implant. And so Doc Robbins is going to do some investigating, see if he can get any details from this implant. Nick and Sarah are back in the lab with the trash, expensive trash. And they are then going through the trash to help narrow down what neighborhood it's from. So they're like finding bills and receipts and things like that and marking down the neighborhood. We then have Catherine back with Doc Robbins. They're not in the morgue this time, though. They're just like out in one of the hallways or something.
It's like Doc Robbins' contract this season is like, I want to be outside of that one room.
Yeah, he wants scenes outside of the morgue. So they're not in the morgue. And we learn that the implant is a artificial spine disc, and the victim is a one Amy Ennis who lives in Austin, Texas. So we stay with this storyline for a bit. Catherine, Nick, and Sarah are checking trash barrels on Storm Cloud Lane, and multiple barrels have blood. So now they gotta like run some tests to see which are human. They, find several that test positive for the blood being human, but they narrow it down to one can, thus one address.
Sort of montage, right, with them like testing COVID era-esque style tests, or pregnancy style tests. One line means not human, two lines means human.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. So then they go to what we are to imagine is the homeowner whose barrel it is. So Catherine is talking to the homeowner. He is feigning ignorance, right? Like, I don't know this woman. I don't know why you're suspicious of my trash can. His daughter arrives.
He doesn't know this woman.
This is true. This is true. At this point, he does not. His daughter arrives home.
This is my massive spot to guest star. This is Evan Rachel Wood. Mm-hmm. Probably the biggest, most recent thing she's in is Westworld.
Yes.
She has a pretty big role in that, but she's been in a bunch of movies. And I think there was another TV show she was in for a while. I forget.
I'm just looking at her IMDb now. I don't know.
She was also played Madonna in the Weird Al Yankovic story.
Oh, I have not seen that. So
I have not either.
Oh, she was in True Blood, which I haven't seen, but she was in like a few episodes of True Blood. And then Once and Again, I have no idea what that is, but she was in 56 episodes of it, so she had a decent run there.
I mean, I guess she's in less movies than I thought she was in. Yeah, the biggest thing most recently is and the reason I think that I know who she is Westworld. Mm-hmm. She was probably one of the most major character in that show over the course of several seasons.
Yeah, I didn't realize that she was Lucy in Across the Universe, which I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I really loved that movie. So that's funny. I did not recognize her. When I was looking through the cast, I saw her name and I recognized her name.
Okay.
But I wasn't going to call this out as a spot the guest star because I did not, in the watching of the episode, recognize her.
So this is the name that I saw in the credits.
That's what I figured. As soon as you were like, "Oh, there was a name in the credits," I was like, "This has to be the person that he's talking about."
Put like starring, and then it was in bigger font than everyone else's name, and I went, "Was she a big deal at this time?" And
possibly,
she's so young. I was like,
"She's so young." Possibly, I've also learned from listening to another podcast where they review a TV show is how and where your name is featured in the credits is like negotiated by your agent.
Yeah.
So maybe she just had a really, really good agent that was like, hey, you want her for this episode, you need to put her name front and center in the credits. But we don't have the inside information, I'm afraid, so we're not entirely sure. But, so Nora, his daughter, comes home. This gave me the ick. He immediately is like, oh yeah, go in and make dinner. Okay, unemployed man, why can't you go make dinner?
Yeah.
Why does your daughter, who is still in school, it would seem, have to go to school, come home from school, and then make dinner?
It's actually
when you are unemployed.
It's actually a really great exchange for the rest of the plot line. The way that she's like, oh, what do you want? And he's very dismissive, and but you could tell that, and she has these flowers in her hand that they never explain.
No.
Again, but you, spoiler alert, learn that she has a lot of affection for her father.
Yes.
And so presumably they're for him in a lot of ways.
Presumably.
Or she bought them for herself to pretend they're gifts from him.
Or bought them to spruce up the house because that's something that she would think to do without being asked. Right.
Yeah. For the family.
Yeah. So his son Charlie also gets home at the same time. We learned that he has been divorced 5 years, which will become very important later on in the episode. But before then, we're with Grissom and Warwick. They're at a car dealership, and we learned that the tox results came back for Fred Stearns, and he had like an organic poison. They don't know at this time what type of poison, but he had an organic poison in his system.
So we get a glimpse of a character here.
Marty Gibson.
And Marty is also about the guest star for me.
I was wondering if Marty was going to be a guest star for you.
Yeah, Marty is Joey Slotnick. Mm-hmm. And I totally forgot of this TV show. And then I watched a clip from it, and I went, oh yeah, that's 1,000% where I know this guy from. It's called The Single Guy.
I don't think I ever saw it.
Just one of those late 90s, early 2000s sitcoms.
Okay.
Where they were trying to play off of shows like Seinfeld and Friends. I actually don't know where it falls in the timeline, but I did end up watching a clip that had Ross Geller, basically, or David Schwimmer, basically playing Ross Geller in it. And I was like, I can't tell if this was like right before Friends or right after Friends, and they were trying to go off. But it's another NBC show. It was only 1995 to 1997. Okay. Where Friends.
Yeah, 43 episodes.
1994. So yeah, Friends was already on. So it was kind of like a thing. But yeah,
he's also in Twister.
Ernest Borgnine was in that show, and I remember that character so well. He plays like a doorman. He's in like a bit part, and he's like the Kramer character in that TV show.
Okay.
And yeah, it's such a weird show, but I don't know. It must have been on early, because that's usually the reason why I was able to watch it.
Yeah.
I was still that makes sense. Pretty young at that time.
Yeah. So Marty Gibson is out there in the lot trying to sell, and they go inside the dealership. They meet Nancy Leiden and her dog Gigi, and she brings them up to the victim's desk and lets them know that no one has like touched the desk since he dropped at the.
Another great little bit with the dog. She says she's not
supposed to bring him to work. Yeah.
And which I, again, on the rewatch was like, oh, because she can't leave him at home. Yes. It would be too dangerous, which will become important later. We get a little bit of a collection montage. They're working. Grissom are processing the desks. They're collecting mugs. Grissom realizes like the phone has like a sticky substance on it. They find like a piece of shed skin in a like suit jacket. They then meet the prankster coworker. So this guy has no problem saying that he pranked he put super glue on his phone, and he made him chew black chewing gum, and like just on the last day that this guy was alive, he was pranked at least twice by this dude.
Yeah, he
that's a lot of pranking.
He had a lot of pranks, and I'm not a fan of being pranked. Like that's not something I enjoy. Yeah. So I'm not sure what our level of supposed to like or dislike this character is, but I dislike him immensely because I am not a fan of pranks. So I immediately was like, I do not like this guy.
He's the person in the office that nobody really likes.
Yeah, I would hope so. But we learned during this exchange that Fred Stearns, the victim, passed away again. So now he's dead for real this time.
Jim Brass didn't save anyone's life.
I mean, he did save his life technically. I don't know if
the guy ever woke up.
I mean, you don't have to wake up to technically save somebody's life. He was viably alive.
Yeah. He just died slower than normal.
We then have a Jim Brass and Catherine walk and talk, and we learn...
maybe it's later. There's a weird scene where Warwick is looking at the board here. There's like a sales board, and it says like Cabo sweepstakes at the top, which is important.
Oh gosh, yeah, I don't know when that happens. I'll be honest. I don't have that specifically jotted in my notes.
I think it's in this scene, but it's also messed me up because I was trying to figure out if they have like a close up of the board, if it mattered, like what was up there, or there was some kind of like interesting tell about like maybe Marty's falling behind or Fred's doing really well or something. And it uses sort of kind of nonsense numbers. And then it panned out and I realized it's not even the same board in the close-up shot. In the
far away weird.
Shot. Oh, like the
CSI.
The patterns, the color patterns are all messed up. And I was like, I really hope that I didn't spend that long looking at the close-up and they went through all this time to make something in there and I still missed it.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you worked on this show 20 years ago
let us know.
You were the production assistant who put all that time in, let us know. But also, I'm sorry, it didn't come across.
I mean, that's
I put real time into trying.
Yeah. So, this very well could be the scene that this happens in for sure. We are then with Jim Brass and Catherine, a little bit of a walk and talk. We learn that the victim's car is at the Tangiers. We're then with Grissom, with Doc Robbins and David. We learn that his victim, Fred Stearns, had a gastric ulcer, and that's probably how the poison got into his bloodstream. So he ingested it. And normally it wouldn't have killed him because the, acid in his stomach would have degraded it before it could get into the bloodstream. But because he had this ulcer, it just like leached right into the bloodstream.
Yeah, super, super highway. Also, great camera shot where he's cutting him open alongside this cut from when they first cut him open. I appreciated that.
It was good. We're then with Nick and Sarah. They're with the victim's car and the luggage. There's a piece of lingerie in the luggage. Nick then fumes the car. He finds a print. This brings us to Catherine entering a room where Nick is running the prints or has ran the prints. And we learn that the prints all match the victim, but the prints come up as a Kelly Easton, not as the name that they originally got.
Ennis or whatever it was.
Maybe I put Easton, but you could...
no. Her first.
Okay, sorry. I was like, wow, did I get that so wrong? I was like, that's a word I'm pretty
Easton
familiar
was
with.
Correct. Yeah,
okay, yeah. Sorry, it's been as I was telling Nick before we started recording. It's been a really long week of work this week, and I think my brain is not working at 100%. So this brings us to Catherine back with the husband, and he's just saying like, hey. I didn't know that that's the name that my wife was now going by. So when you asked me earlier if I knew this person, I legitimately did not. And then he's just saying, look, like my wife left. Like you guys were here 5 years ago. You did the grid pattern. You brought the dogs. You didn't find anything. I lost my job. Everyone in the neighborhood thinks I killed her. The grandparents try to sue me for custody. Like all these terrible things happen. But like I didn't kill my wife. Like I didn't kill her then. But they're not going to just settle for this, right? We gotta dig a little bit further, thankfully. And so Catherine is in the bedroom with Sarah. Sarah finds panties, so it looks like dad had a girlfriend. And then Sarah is back outside with the husband, and this is where he admits that his wife just like showed up a month ago.
Yep.
And he admits that they at least were having a physical affair with one another, that like that aspect of it had been rekindled.
Yeah, they don't give us a lot. I feel like they dodge around numbers and days and
yes,
details.
They do for sure.
There's this. It's clearly more than a one-off because there's presents gone out and purchased and exchanged.
Yeah,
but it's I don't want to say because it becomes important throughout for the rest of the episode. The timing.
It does. So we go back to Catherine in the bedroom. She finds hairs on the bed. Nick is in Charlie's room. He finds a notebook with like a lot of violent drawings, which leads us to Nick talking to Charlie. And essentially he's just like, okay, I guess my mom is really dead. And then that's the end of following the Charlie string.
Yeah, like they're really trying to make you think this is a troubled kid, real like scare, like panic satanic panic kind of.
Yes, it is. It definitely has that vibe to it for sure.
Which I don't know, man. I feel like I knew a lot of teenagers who drew stuff like that in their notebooks, and they weren't going out killing their moms.
This is true. So then we're with Catherine with Nora, the daughter, and she's trying to learn from Nora if her dad has like a new girlfriend, like is there a new woman in his life? And
another great
her response, and I definitely had to note this down, was like, how could he?
Yeah.
And of course,
it's crazy talk.
And in this moment, you can kind of see Catherine like not quite able to process what this means. Like she doesn't push it any further, but you can just see they pan to her face, and Catherine's kind of like, "What? Like, what do you? Okay, but well, don't worry, dear listeners. We will come back to this."
She has like the stomach pain, and
yes, she asks if she can sit down. Like she's kind of grasping her stomach. She asks if she can sit down, and then they have this conversation.
I wrote down at this moment, is she pregnant?
Oh, look at you.
But then I wrote down, they showed a scene of them searching her drawers.
So next scene, we're with Catherine in Nora's room, and she finds like vitamins, like she finds like these supplements. Yeah, and then she also finds a very fancy bracelet.
I think that's what I wrote that down. Is she pregnant? Like, is she taking prenatal vitamins?
Because they buy like these like prenatal supplement vitamins, and she also finds a very fancy bracelet. Sarah's then in the kitchen. She finds a bit of blood splatter on the floor and also a missing pan. Like very obviously against the wall. There's like an outline of where a pan used to be hanging, and now there is no pan.
It's like, all I could think is like, you clean around this pan. Like it made it look like that was the dirty spot. And the rest of the wall was clean.
I don't know if it was dirty or was it a light.
Like faded, not faded.
That's more what I was leaning towards. Was it was facing a window, and that's where like around it had faded because of the light, and underneath the pan had not. That was my takeaway.
We made a weird choice and where to shade and not shade, but functionally we all got the memo, right? There was a pan there.
There was a pan there. We got what they were trying to say. Yeah. We're then with Nick and Catherine. They're in the garage, and Nick is letting them know that he found hairs in the freezer, and this is where they realize.
Crazy place to look. I mean, I guess they look everywhere.
They look everywhere. I mean, they should. If you're investigating a murder, you should be looking everywhere. And this is where they realize that the victim was frozen. That's why she wasn't bloated. That's why, like.
Okay, they never really. So they talk about the frozen peas. The cooler is full of frozen peas.
Yes, and when they were going through the trash, they found bags of frozen peas.
Yeah, they never really talk about why these people own a lifetime supply of frozen peas. And I racked myself. Did they go out and buy the frozen peas to help? So they would have them to help try to keep the body cold when they got rid of it? Or did they just already have that many frozen peas in their freezer?
Yeah, I don't.
And they never explain it.
They never explain it.
I like to think that because dad is such a bad, well, I don't want to say call him just straight up a bad father, but he's an absent parental unit.
He is definitely not a present one.
Maybe, peas are cheap.
Yeah.
They were on sale at Costco.
I don't particularly like peas, so I don't know.
And they loaded up on way too many peas.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe that's what happened. We leave the storyline for a bit. We're with Warwick examining the shed collected from the office. Grissom enters. We learned that the poison was snake venom. So pieces are starting to come together.
I do think I don't know enough or really anything about snake venom, but I did think it was a little weird that they got to the point they're like, this is definitely snake venom, but then we can't tell you anything more about it. Like
they later on will be able to tell more.
Yeah,
about it.
Yeah, they kind of do, but you would imagine like they would have a family of snakes or something like that.
That might be like that. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that that's like the next level of testing, right? Like the outer level of testing is like, hey, it's snake venom, and then it's like, all right, do you want to like take that next level of investigation and find out what from what snake it is?
Yeah, I guess I also don't know enough. Like I don't actually know. A lot of times these things are like convergently evolve, right? So you can like tell, but I actually don't know what the case is with snakes. I don't know.
I mean, I do know. And this might not technically be relevant to this case, that if you get bitten by a snake, they want you to bring the snake with you.
Yeah, it's super important.
Because it is very, and so my assumption would be it's not easy to quickly tell from what snake venom comes from.
Yes.
So if you get bitten by a snake and you don't know if it's venomous or not, I hate advocating killing snakes because they're wonderful and they play a very important part of our ecosystem, but kill the snake and bring it with you.
I guess the thing I was getting hung up, I think that was hanging me up is like, I feel like a lot of the toxins they're used, like there's like a bunch of different ways to like try to make toxins, and like the creatures that make the same types of toxins, those toxins are closer to each other than like closely related animals who make toxins that try to go after different pathways, just because the pathways look a certain way.
Yeah.
So they evolve. So that's I was like, at that moment, and I get it later. You're right. Like later on, we're gonna get way more into this.
Yeah, we're gonna get more into this. Yeah.
But I was like, wait, they don't know. They don't know what kind of snake it is yet.
They don't know yet.
Yeah,
so...
let's give them the benefit of there's a quick snake venom test.
Yeah.
And the lab doesn't own the specialized snake venom.
That's what I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt in this instance.
That's probably actually not that far from the truth.
Yeah. So this brings us to Grissom and Warwick with Marty, and we learned that he put down 24 mice as a business expense, and they want to know, what'd you do with the mice, Marty?
Was it 24? I was so confused.
I wrote it down very specifically. I was like, 24 mice.
I thought it was 2, and then I was like, did he breed the mice to get all these other mice?
No, he bought 24 frozen mice. And so they want to know, hey, Marty, where are the mice? Which brings Warwick, Grissom, and an animal control officer with Marty down to his basement full of snakes. So, and venomous, like it admits right off the bat, like, yep, like these are venomous snakes. And so
I think, yeah. In real, I know why they didn't do it, but I think you of all people can appreciate these enclosures are very large for the size, at least for the size of the snake.
No, they're not. They should be much bigger.
No, I mean, but like they're not, it's not like it fits in a bag, like a small bag. One of these would presumably have to have been missing in this situation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And there was no like, frying pan shadow wall.
Yeah. So I've been to a venom lab before. I have been to a few rescues that had permits to keep venomous snakes because people illegally keep venomous snakes and then they get confiscated and then they have to go somewhere. And this is not a good setup for venomous snakes. Like those snakes would just like push the tops of their enclosures off and get out.
Yeah.
So this was like understandably for a TV set. These weren't actually venomous snakes. Like these were non-venomous snakes that we were supposed to like think were venomous snakes. Other than that, I think the one scene where they're milking the snake, I think that one actually is a venomous snake. But most of these are not actually venomous snakes. They're just snakes. But this is not how you keep venomous snakes, my friends. Check your local laws to see if you can keep venomous snakes or not. Some states you can. Some states
a bunch of tanks on a table in the middle of a room. It was like really weird.
Yeah, not
camera.
Not how one should go about handling venomous
snakes. The one
snakes.
Scene where I was like, "What?
Yeah,
who framed this scene? This is
not great." But we'll follow up on the snakes. Before then, we're with Jim Brass and the husband and his attorney, and he's just saying, hey, I didn't know she was dead. Like, didn't know. And I did know this later on plays. I thought I thought something happened later that this would account this detail for, and then it did not. So then I was especially like, I want to call this out. So he's, for all intents purposes, Jim Brass is interrogating the husband, right? His attorney is there. The door to the interrogation room, wide open.
Oh, really?
It's wide open. It's wide open.
And he has the good attorney. That guy
and he has the good attorney. Like and Jim Brass is following the line of, well, hey, because the husband keeps saying she left 5 years ago. And Jim Brass is like, not quite. It'll be 5 years ago in 3 weeks. And if she had been gone for 5 years, then she could have been legally declared as dead and you could have collected the life insurance policy on her. So like, did she show back up and ruin your chance of getting a bunch of money?
I'm morbidly curious if when we get to the end of the episode, if this guy's life insurance policy would still let him collect.
Oh, good point.
And I use the word morbidly curious appropriately here.
Yes, that is true. So we're with Grissom with a woman a snake expert? They never really explain who this woman is.
Apparently she's in 4 episodes, by the way.
Yeah, she is. I shouldn't say she is as in I know she's in exactly 4 episodes, but I knew when I saw her that this wasn't the only episode that she was
I didn't look to see if they're close together or far apart. I don't know how many times they're coming across snakes, but I was like, I actually thought this as another person, they looked really familiar, and I was like, I didn't peg them on anything, so I didn't write them down. But when I was doing my check, I was like, was this a person? And they're not even on the first page of the IMDb.
Oh yeah, on the IMDb. Yeah. So Grissom is talking to her. She is saying that the shed that they collected off the jacket is from a diamondback rattlesnake, and she is theorizing that that Marty / possibly the killer milked the snake for the venom. But this is where we learn that the victim did not have any necrosis. So it was not from so the venom was not diamondback rattlesnake venom, because there would have been necrosis, because that's how its venom operates. Instead, it was a neurotoxic. It like paralyzed the victim. And so she's like, here's a few other snakes in his collection that it might be, but it's not the diamondback. Catherine is then with Greg Sanders. We learn that from the crime scene that the blood is the mom's, and the hair from the freezer, and the bed are, but the pubic hairs from the bed are not. They are, in fact, her daughter's.
Which, I guess Dad would watch the sheets.
Yeah.
Because, like, they clearly did have sex with that. Mom and Dad.
Yes, Mom and Dad did. Yes.
Yeah. Like, I guess there's other ways you could eliminate pubic hair. But.
This is true. And so Catherine is then talking to the daughter.
The bracelet was a gift.
From your father. Diamonds and platinum, that's pretty fancy.
Guess you thought I deserved it.
Why?
For taking care of everything.
Everything?
Laundry, groceries, carbo for Charlie.
Is that it?
Talking to Nora, and she's trying to, without being direct at first, like trying to get her to admit that, her father was assaulting her.
Yep.
But she's just saying, my dad loves me. The bracelet was a gift from my dad. I took care of everything, and so he just really appreciated me. And you can tell that she's becoming more anxious and more stressed as Catherine is talking to her. And then she starts lactating. And so Catherine's like, oh my goodness, are you pregnant? So this is the scene where I was like, oh, this is why they left the door open, because Catherine comes storming in. No. Catherine comes storming in, but she opens the door to go into the interrogation room with the dad, and his attorney isn't there anymore.
No. Which is weird in and of itself.
All of it is weird. His attorney's disappeared. There's nobody in there with him. She opens the door. She goes in. She calls him a sick SOB. He's saying that he has no clue that Nora is pregnant. Like, this is brand new to him. Doesn't know what she's talking about. And he also claims, and Catherine, and I did like, especially on the second watch through, I was like, this is a good one. He is trying to say that he bought the bracelet for his wife, but Catherine's basically talking over him. Like, Catherine's not registering.
She's not doing a great job investigating.
No, she is not registering.
Very emotionally charged.
Yeah, that he is saying, no, I didn't get that bracelet for Nora. I got that bracelet for my wife. And so we'll definitely come back to the storyline. But before we do, we're with Grissom and Warwick. They're with Greg Sanders, and none of the snakes produced the venom that killed the victim. So this is a little bit weird. So
they've gotten the secondary test done.
Yeah, and Grissom is like, maybe he just got rid of the snake. This is a bit too much coincidence. Like, I'm not willing to just brush this off as coincidence.
Yeah.
Maybe he just got rid of the snake. So then we see our animal control officer again. He's with a monocled cobra and also not handling a venomous snake well. You do not freehand a venomous snake.
Also shoving it in the face of the person you're talking to.
Yeah. Not a good idea. And we learn, and CSI, you need to stop doing this. The snake ate the woman's dog. This is 2 animal deaths. 2 dog deaths.
Always the little dogs, too.
I would say medium-sized dog was the awful neighbor.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I would say that was like a medium-sized dog. Stop killing the dog, CSI. Poor little Gigi. And I have a Chihuahua, so it like hurt extra.
Also, that snake's stomach was not big enough to have.
It was definitely not big enough. No, it would not. It would have looked at that Chihuahua and been like, no, like that's too much.
I'm sure there are snakes you could keep in your house that would eat a Chihuahua in the right situation.
A Burmese python, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, snakes will never probably.
A reticulated python, Burmese python, full grown, totally could take down like a 5-pound Chihuahua. But that monocled cobra, no. So, or like, it would have been more believable if. Because they said it ate her dog. It would have been more believable if it just envenomated her dog.
Killed her dog.
Just killed her dog. But
you wouldn't have gotten the comical moment of holding a snake at the end of a hook.
Yeah. So we learn that Marty promised that he would take her to Cabo. Like, he's going to win this sales contest at the dealership. He would bring her to Cabo. And she says, this might be the title of our episode, never trust a car's salesman.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
And she's like, you're a little late.
Yeah, she's like, you're a little
late. You
late.
are hiding the snake.
I know. But she, to be fair, she legitimately thought that Fred
salesman died.
But she legitimately thought that Fred Stearns died of a heart attack. Like, when they went in, she was like, oh, he died of a heart attack.
I guess I gave her too much credit.
I don't think she's supposed to be the brightest bulb.
Yeah.
So I see her as innocent and just kind of naive.
Fair.
And then we learn that at the moment, she's the one getting people coffee at the dealership, but it used to be Marty. So there's a few too many coinkydinks going on here, because he was the Goodwill guy.
Was the line Grissom's like, did you do anything else for him? She's like, well, not that.
Not that. I loved this character, actually. I thought she was great. This actor was wonderful.
She wasn't in enough of the episode.
She was not. She's just like, not that. So we then go, and I'll be curious, again, this is not like a knock on the episode. It was just like, there's just like a few weird things that happen in this episode. We go to Grissom walking Marty out. Like, there's an officer there, but Grissom is the one like physically walking him out of the dealership. Like,
it's like a little weird, I think, for Grissom's character, because like
he normally doesn't get involved in this stuff.
Dig it in to Marty for some reason.
Yeah, and so we basically learn that Marty wanted to get ahead, and the victim was keeping him down and wasn't giving him any leads. And it's strange in the sense that it's maybe he didn't mean to kill him. Like, maybe he was just hoping the snake venom was going to make him sick.
Yeah, I think that is the idea, is that he thought that the snake venom was going to mess him up, make him sick.
Yeah.
Make his, I don't know. And,
miss some days at the dealership so he could take some of his clients. Something.
But because he had an ulcer,
it killed him.
He got exposed to his bloodstream.
Yeah.
It's hemotoxic, killed some.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, it was funny because I realized I said earlier, I referred to the snake as poisonous, which is not typically true, but is true in Fred's case, where he ate a part of the snake and died as a result.
That is true.
So in his case, it was a poisonous snake.
So that wraps up that storyline. And we understand that Nora, she gets an exam. Obviously, we don't see the exam. And then after the exam, the nurse whispers something to Catherine. We very quickly cut.
Pretty obvious what she said.
Yeah. We very quickly cut to Catherine and Sarah and learn that Nora is a virgin. So what is going on here? Like, what is happening? We very soon after learn that she is going through essentially an imagined pregnancy.
Yeah.
Like, she's in such a heightened emotional state that she has convinced herself that she is pregnant, and her body is believing her.
Actually,
her body's responding as if she was pregnant.
When she started lactating, at this point, Dad was too obvious.
Yeah.
I was already onto her, plus, the actress being later very famous actress. I was already on to the daughter, and I started to think they made the supplements were to fake a pregnancy.
And
then so I'm really glad they very quickly explained it, because I would have kept going to that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Instead, they're like, no, it's a psychosomatic thing.
Yes. And we learned that the leaking that she experienced can be brought on by stress. And Catherine very acutely points out that obviously the father is clueless on like with every woman in his life. Like he has no idea what's happening with the women in his life. He is completely out there.
You know, they've been accusing this guy of murder for the entire episode. They are not ready to say, hey, I'm sorry. They definitely are still holding him accountable for his parenting over the last many years, which it's tough. It's tough for me to ever like try to say a parent is a bad parent, but I think there is definitely room for improvement.
I would suffice to say, I don't mind going on a limb here and saying bad parent. At least with his daughter. We don't have enough context to say if he's a bad parent to his son, but he is most certainly a bad parent to his daughter.
He's definitely not a good parent.
Yeah. So
he's definitely not a okay parent.
Yeah. We're with Catherine. We're with Catherine with Nora. She has no attorney. So evidently he's so much of a bad father that he hired himself an attorney, but did not provide an attorney for his daughter.
I was in the intention that she's under 18, but maybe she's in college.
Maybe she's in college. They never quite clear that up,
normally
to be honest with
you
you.
need the child advocate.
Yeah, the advocate there. So maybe she's like 8. I mean, you could technically be a high school senior and be 18. I turned 18 when I was a high school senior.
I did too. Yeah.
So, but yeah, no advocate, no attorney, just Catherine, Jim Brass, Nora, and Catherine is questioning her like, "Hey, is this your shirt?" Which obviously has like leaking stains on it and blood and a lot of telling signs. And this is where we realize that she sees her father as hers. Like her father, it's like mine, and was not happy that her mom was back in the picture because that meant that her father's attentions were elsewhere. And so we see a reenactment of...
Which is a stretch of the imagination of the word attention. Because to say he was giving her attention.
Yes, he was not giving her that sort of attention, but...
I mean, it felt like he wasn't giving her any attention.
This is also true.
Yeah.
So we see a reenactment of Nora, like catching her father and mother being intimate, and then of the crime, and then the beginning of the disposal. And essentially Catherine's like, I'm sorry, like we have this evidence on you. We have to arrest you. And
I'm sorry we have to arrest you because you murdered somebody.
Yeah, but I think so they
go to getting picked on, and he's going to jail all the same for murdering somebody.
I know. So they go to cuff her to carry, and she's just like screaming that she's gonna have a baby. And this is actually, I think it was before this. This is, or maybe right afterwards. It was like right at the same time. I didn't jot it down, but I viscerally was like, oh man, like Evan Rachel Wood did a really, really great job. She was like screaming that she never asked for anything. Like, I did everything, I took care of everything, and I never asked for anything. And that like broke my heart a little bit because her dad totally parentified her. Her dad was just like, oh, okay, your mom's gone, so like other than like, no, he was not sexually assaulting her, thank goodness, but he basically was just like, you're gonna do all the mom stuff, and I'm just not gonna do anything.
Arguably,
so, goodbye childhood. Like
abusive.
You don't. Yeah. And so they can't take her away. Catherine and Jim Brass have a short talk, and Jim Brass is like, she's going to get an attorney, and the attorney is going to claim insanity, as a defense. And Catherine's like, that's a good defense. Like, fair. Like, she legitimately thinks she's pregnant, like with her father's baby. So you probably can.
She got a good chance. Also, I think she's got a lot of cards in her favor for a jury. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's the end of the episode. So, Nick, what did you think about today's episode?
I liked it. And I think that when the first walkthrough, I was like, oh, that's a pretty good episode.
Yep.
And it was definitely one of those episodes where I just liked it more on the second walk through. So
okay.
I gave it a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
And a rewatch. I enjoyed it. It was really pretty easy to rewatch. I kept finding stuff. At one point, I was like, was I just really tired and dull the first time I watched this? But no, we kind of talked about it. They did a good job of like putting stuff in and then not. This is almost like when I don't like it on a rewatch where they're like, oh, remember that thing that we talked about earlier? That is because of this, that, and this other thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you don't have to spell it out for me every single time.
Yeah.
Like I'm 5, right? But But this one, yeah, there was just a lot of subtle things. Even like the Cabo board, which I didn't clock at all the first time through.
Yeah.
But then at the end, she's like, "Who's gonna take me to Cabo?"
Who's gonna take me to Cabo?
You know, it's like, oh wow, they did such a good job with all these little breadcrumbs in this episode. They had this funky musical soundtrack going on.
They definitely had some funky. They had some
cool,
funky beats.
A couple cool cinematic shots. So like, not a ton of story development. And was Warwick in a scene this episode?
Yeah, Warwick was in quite a few. He was in the whole. Okay. He was in the whole dealership one.
Oh yeah, you're right. What am I saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I guess I started thinking like, so funny. I just very quickly forgot about that, even though we've talked about him 5 times.
Yeah, I was like, I definitely mentioned him in our recap. I definitely brought him up.
Scenes. He was in a lot of the location scenes. He was in
a lot of the location scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so not a lot of storyline, which it would be bad. Like I think that's why like this episode could never get to like a 5.
Yeah,
because you would need those other things.
Yeah.
It'd be bad if every episode was this and then no storyline. Although we did have the Grissom thing, which I didn't even pick up the first time through with the hearing.
Oh, with the hearing,
yeah, with David, which I thought was very well done. But that was really just a tiny moment. But so yeah, like 4 out of 5. I don't remember if we've had a 4.5 yet, but I'm not gonna.
I don't know.
But definitely one of the better episodes of the season so far for me.
All right, I'm going to go a little lower, but definitely not bad. This was not, especially after the last few episodes, this was not a bad episode. This, to me, was a very middle of the road episode. So I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It had some funny moments. It had some of the quirky things that I enjoy. You know, when like CSI is a little campy. I like when CSI is a little campy. So it had some campiness to it. And everyone was involved. So that made me happy. And the acting, especially from Evan Rachel Wood, was like just fantastic. I think the reason I'm not going higher is I did have a bit of a tougher time on the rewatch.
Oh yeah.
Like I wasn't like as vested, and then I was kind of like, oh, I was like, well, and as you mentioned, other than the scene with Grissom and his hearing, so as you mentioned, there's essentially no character development in this episode other than that one scene with Grissom. So I always enjoy, I feel when an episode provides more character development, that usually bumps it up a bit for me.
For sure.
But I would say this is a watch. Like I wouldn't say skip this episode. I would say watch this episode. There are definitely fun components to it. There's interesting components to it. There's some good acting to it. Everybody's involved. But would I give it a rewatch? Probably not. And then, yeah, there's not really any character development, which I'm a big fan of. So I'm giving this a 3 out of 5. I think it was a decent episode and much better than our recent episodes. So I'm definitely not complaining on that front by any stretch.
I might have given this episode a small bump.
That's fair. That's very fair. That is
recency bias.
That is understandable. That's, we're only human here. But we will see what we think about in our next episode when we return to review season 3 episode 13, Random Acts of Violence. In the meantime, you can support us on Patreon by going to patreon.com and searching for Who Are You, a CSI podcast. You can also find us on Facebook the same way. We're also on Twitter/X and Instagram at Who Are You CSI Pod. We also have a website, whoareyoucsipod.com. But otherwise, we will talk to you next week.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.